Do you know the meaning of the word Trekkie? It's a word that describes 25 million Americans, the huge cult following of the old science fiction TV series Star Trek. 10 years after it went off national TV, the enthusiasm and number of Trekkies kept growing. And now Hollywood has responded with a Star Trek movie. We decided to find out about the Trekkies and why they are so devoted to what happens in fictional outer space aboard the famous Starship Enterprise. The blastoff came 3 weeks ago, a gala premiere in Washington, December 6th. The audience caught the spirit befitting a movie voyage to outer space. It quickly set a record. The biggest first-week gross in the history of motion pictures, over $17 million. And it clearly had meaning for a lot of future-minded Star Trek fans.
I grew up wanting to be an astronaut. Okay, in Star Trek you saw that this was possible, that people will live in space.
The reason I enjoy it so much is because that it is totally conceivable. I do believe in life on other planets.
Gene Roddenberry, a former pilot, a former policeman, created the Star Trek series and produced the movie.
We hit with this at the time the anti-hero was so popular. There were no heroes left for the American public. And along came these people that say, when I say something, that's it, because I'm a man of my word.
The Enterprise went into space in 1966, launched by NBC with a crew that became familiar in many households. The stalwart Captain Kirk, heroic commander of the Starship.
I think a lot of people were attracted by the family of players. They grew to like the family of players.
Mr. Spock, whose Vulcan ancestry accounts for his memorable ears.
The distant aspect of the character, the remoteness of the character. I think the fact that the character claimed, at least, to be devoid of emotions and therefore unreachable, and yet I think that's a challenge.
Bones McCoy, less logical and a bit more human than Spock.
McCoy is really a country doctor, so to speak, a man who hates to see all of this modernization falling in on him too fast. We're beginning to lose that humanity.
Scotty, the trustworthy Scotsman who ran the engine room.
People will look on Star Trek and all the scientific aspects of Star Trek and say, why not?
Uhura, the communications officer, fourth in command.
I just knew at that moment now that black children must look at me on that ship, even if I was just pushing some buttons, and know that that is a person that I can identify with, that I can emulate.
I just wanted to find a vehicle where I could say some things that were in my gut. And I remember thinking that Jonathan Swift, well, I don't place myself on a par with him, had the same problem, though, and he wanted to talk about England of his time, and he invented Gulliver's Travels. And I thought, wow, maybe if I could get some polka-dotted little things out on a far-off planet, I can talk, you know, I can take a couple of shots at the Vietnam thing that's coming up and all of that, and we used it that way.
There comes to all races an ultimate crisis. We faced a similar crisis in our early nuclear age. We found the wisdom not to destroy ourselves.
Star Trek was unique, but its audience, while devoted, wasn't big enough for network TV.
And our fans kept rushing to our rescue and doing torchlight parades against NBC. I remember one time they sneaked into Rockefeller Center and put Save Star Trek stickers on all the executive limousines.
A determined letter-writing campaign kept it on the air for a third year, but as this Saturday Night Live parody showed, it was ultimately shot down by a very unfuturistic foe.
I'm Captain James C. Kirk of the Starship Enterprise, representing the United Federation of Planets.
Hi, I'm Herb Goodman, head of programming for the network.
Stand back. I will not hesitate to shoot.
Can I have your attention, please? Ladies and gentlemen, due to the low Nielsen ratings, we at NBC have decided to, unfortunately, cancel Star Trek.
Fire at my command.
The fans couldn't rescue it again. NBC did cancel the series. Star Trek, off the network, drifted into the twilight zone of local station reruns, one step from extraterrestrial oblivion. But something happened, a unique phenomenon in television history. Instead of fading away, it became the most successful rerun ever, with the most devoted following. Even now, it's seen 308 times a week on 106 American stations, and is also shown overseas in 37 earthly languages.
Capitaine, aucune réponse. J'ai essayé toutes les fréquentes. 故障箇所発生。非常システムに切り替えました。彼らを止める方法はそれしかない。そうは思えん。科学やめたまえ。私の目の前でドクターや看護婦が次々に例の物質に変えられてしまったな。
No new episodes were being made, but Star Trek continued to spark a creative appetite. Trekkies published their own fan magazines called fanzines, with fans creating their own scripts, their own drawings, complete descriptions of gadgetry, and their own embellishments of Star Trek lore. They formed clubs, traded Star Trek products, and in 1973, the first Trekkie convention was organized by Joan Winston.
The very first Star Trek convention was a fluke. We expected maybe 300 people, and we got 3,600, and it blew our minds. And that showed us how much Star Trek meant to so many people.
One appeal of the conventions was meeting the actors who played their heroes.
I tell you that the Klingons have changed in appearance somewhat. They have an enormous ridge going up right across their head. It looks like a lot of warts all together, and I blame that on the tribbles that I sent over to them.
If all this talk of Klingons and tribbles makes you feel that you've been hanging around the wrong end of the galaxy, you could catch up fast by doing what these folks did. Watching all 79 Star Trek episodes and remembering every last detail. Trekkie mania flourishes nationwide. A Los Angeles housewife, B. Jo Trimble, blotted out her living room picture window with a painted Trekkie Christmas message. Mrs. Trimble might be the foremost Trekkie of them all, rallying letter-writing campaigns to save the show and to rename the U.S. Space Shuttle.
We started the campaign to get it named the Enterprise, and it succeeded. All of the letters went in to President Ford, and in a sort of surprise move, he named the shuttlecraft Enterprise instead of the name that was chosen.
At rollout ceremonies for the Space Shuttle, instead of hearing America the Beautiful, the crowd listened to the theme from Star Trek. Despite the unflagging enthusiasm of Star Trek, Paramount wasn't sure it would make a popular movie. But then came Star Wars and Close Encounters, revealing a huge market for cinematic science fiction. The studio put an end to 8 years of vacillation and went ahead with the movie.
Permission to come aboard, sir. Well, I felt at that point that certainly I would not want to see the movie done without Spock, and I would not want to see anybody else play him.
I've been monitoring your communications with Starfleet Command, Captain. I offer my services as science officer.
Gene Roddenberry wanted his starship and special effects to be realistic enough to promote the idea that space travel is part of our future. Graphics designer Lee Cole consulted several scientists before she designed the starship's bridge.
I was so shocked at what we actually have at present. It was hard to even keep up with the present, let alone go into the future. A lot of this is very pretty, but it comes from interesting sources, like all these monitor screens. This is actual experimental color computer graphics readouts, and these charts and graphs you see undulating.
Dock control reports ready, sir.
Take us out.
In the middle and late 70s, America's fascination with the actual exploration of space went into decline. And yet popular interest in science fiction has never been greater.
Mr. Sulu, ahead warp one. Warp one, sir.
Heading, sir?
Out there. That away.
The years have been kind. That was a short decade. We'll be right back.